And we are live. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Positive Power Hour. I am your host, Dan the Man McBee, and I'm happy to have you all here this evening, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching on record. We welcome you and hope that you will find something during the course of our evening today that will help inspire you to become a better person for yourself. All right. So let's start with first things first. As I mentioned to everybody, we were going on a holiday this week, and my wife and I went to see my older brother, who is 5 years older than me. His name is Roland, and I haven't seen where has lived for almost 30 years now up in Northern California. And being that he's 5 years older than me, which makes him really old, I realized this year that I needed to quit saying one of these days I'll go see him and actually make it happen. So we did that. Kate and I both looked at our calendars and we said, okay, where's the time slot that we can time out about 5 or 6 days? And I had vacation time coming. So I said, I called my brother. I said, I told him months ago I was going to make this happen. It's absolutely going to happen. Not sure when yet, but we'll both look at our calendars and see what works. So we finally got it to go this week. It was a nice drive. Kate and I travel very well together, and we drove up there. We left on a Sunday afternoon, right after our church meeting. Kate was the speaker, and she did a great job. And we drove up and got up in Oroville about 8 o'clock on Sunday night. And I've never been to Oroville. And for those of you who have never been there either, Oroville is famous for having the largest man-made lake and dam. And it is a beautiful place. They have their own salmon hatchery connected to the lake. And you could actually see fish jumping out of the water trying to go upstream to the lake area compared to this little stream area. Hi, Melly. Glad to see you're here. And congratulations on the course you're taking. I know you're going to be very successful with it, without a doubt. And so anyway, back to our story. Kimberly's here too. Yay, Kimberly. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. I appreciate the support of everybody. So back to the story of the trip. We get up there and my brother lives a different kind of lifestyle than we do. In fact, his wife told us on the phone, kind of warned us that they live kind of a hillbilly kind of life out there. And I said, well, that's okay. We've seen Justified. So we know, Raylan Givens has shown us exactly how people in that area, the neck of the woods, live, right? But they were just fine. They were wonderful people. We got to meet many of his family members, and we got to meet their friends and got to travel around Oroville. And they took us out on a houseboat on what day was that? Wednesday, I guess it was. And we spent, I think, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours just going around the lake. That's how big this thing is, right? And for those of you that also don't know, Oroville, where my brother lives up in, what is it called now? Let me think about it. Anyway, it'll come to me. But he lives right across the valley from where the big Paradise Fire was. And they had their own fire a year later. And, until you've been in an area that's been devastated like this was, you have no grasp of how severe it was, right? And we went through sections on the hills up there in the mountains where all you saw was gray. Everything was burnt to a crisp. And fortunately, there were very few lives lost, which is, God's grace, right? And but a lot of destruction. It's going to take years for Mother Nature to reheal itself, which, fires are nature's way of clearing dead wood and dead brush and making way for new, right? but it doesn't happen overnight. And for the people that lived up there, they were extremely devastated through the whole thing. And I was really proud of my brother because he and his wife have gotten really involved in their community. And my brother especially does a lot of volunteer work at food banks, and he's part of the not Chamber of Commerce, but city council work, and he works, very closely with the fire department and the parks and recreation department. He's working to try to help them reestablish a park that they used to have there. They're going to put it in a different, same location, I think. They're just going to rebuild it. And the vision is to have bands and activities for the children, so that they can get more people coming back to the community, because so many people lost their homes. And it's not a high income area. There are some people that have money, and I was told that a lot of money up there comes from the pot industry, which that's fine too. Everybody's got to have a way of making a living, I guess, right? And so the people that have really nice homes out there in the desert, up there in the mountains, tend to be people that are in that industry. And they've got the cash to make it nice, right? But the rest of the people are really much lower income socioeconomically, right? They just don't have a lot, and they tend to go to areas like that because it's less expensive to live up there. Plus, they it's like desert people. Desert people and mountain people are just kind of unique people. They're different, right? Not good or bad, just the way it is. But I'm proud of my brother that he has invested so much of his time and energy in helping others. He does it his way, right? And I do it my way. And it was really nice spending some time with him, because for the past 30 some odd years. Hi, Cheryl. I'm really glad you're here too. Welcome. By the way, Cheryl, I'm going to send you a text tonight or tomorrow, so keep an eye out for it. All right. All right. Talk to you then. He knows from his own giving that the giving is the receiving, right? The joy comes from giving. And my brother has a big heart, and he tends to help people maybe more than he should, right? Because sometimes, if you just keep giving a handout to certain people, they'll keep putting their hand out and wanting more rather than learning to fish for themselves, right? So, I got to see a little bit of my dad and my brother, and we all have a bit of that, right? Where we can be what's the word? People enabling, people pleasers. There's another word for it, but anyway. But I got to see that in him as well. And when I see my brother, it's always been for the last almost 30 years that he has come down here to see us, because he has a daughter that lives out here, and he's close with one of my sisters, a couple of my sisters, I guess. And so they all tend to get together. And I've always been kind of the odd person out because I'm a weirdo. I'm a vegetarian, and I don't follow a lot of the younger generation. Anyway, he tends to say, and they camp, and he camps. They all have their own motorhomes. And so they go, and, like he'll be down here for Halloween. And they all get together at the campsite with their mobile homes, and they all sit around a campfire, and they all chat, and and eat meat and drink beer, and whatever the story is. None of those things that I do, right? So, and I've been busy in my life too, and we'll get into that busy thing in a minute as well, because there's some real valuable lessons I got from this trip, and we'll cover some of that as well. But anyway, the point was that I usually see him when he comes down here. Quite often it's just for maybe a lunch or maybe a couple of hours at the campsite. And there's always all these other people with us, my brothers and sisters and friends of theirs and stuff like that. And I never really got much alone time just with him. And it's been that way for almost 30 years. That's a long time. So we get up there and we're spending quality time, just the four of us, right? Now that's still more than just my brother and I, and we covered that a little better later. But it was nice just to have that time without everybody else involved in the conversations, right? So I got to learn more about my brother, like seeing all the work that he does for charity and for helping people. And his wife was a charge nurse or registered nurse. Well, I'm not sure what charge nurse, I guess, is the person that takes care of the shift and decides who works with whom. Anyway, they've both been retired for quite some time, but she had her own community of friends and people that she had worked with in nursing work. And I've always said that, to me, nurses and teachers are all angels, because they don't do it for the pay. I mean, yeah, we all need money, and we work for money, but they don't get paid the kind of money for the kind of work that they do. So to me, they're angels. And so I always hold teachers and nurses in high esteem. I really appreciate what they do from the heart, from the soul. And they recognize, like I do, that soul work is far more gratifying than menial labor for money in exchange for your energy, right? When you give energy to help somebody grow and recognize their value in themselves, that feeds everybody involved and everybody around them, right? I mean, it's like a ripple effect. Like, can you throw a stone in a pond and just watch that ripple travel out further and further and further? That's what giving does. It radiates so far out beyond the initial event or experience, right? So for those of you that are getting more involved in giving, let me remind you that you have no idea how you're affecting people. When you do it in a positive way, it ripples out and it just creates all kinds of change that you will not necessarily see. To give you an example of this, my uncle, God rest his soul, was a priest. His name was Father Peter. His real name was Danny, who I was named after. And he and I would get together. I had the good fortune of being able to travel out to his monastery where he lived in Connecticut and spend some time with him. And we went up for his 50th year jubilee and had an amazing experience all the way down there with one of his brothers, and talking about quantum physics and how it relates to spirituality. And it was just such a lively conversation because we were on the same wavelength, right? And it kind of blew my uncle away. But anyway, when we came back, I sat down for lunch with him, and we talked about. I at first asked him if there was anything about being a priest that he wishes was different. And he said, "Well, I think what I would like to have seen more was, I didn't get to see the results of my work." He was a traveling priest. They would send him to whatever church or monastery, or usually churches, who were, maybe a priest was on vacation or one was sick or whatever, right? And they would send him in to do the Sunday sermon. So he would put together a sermon and he'd give it on Sunday, and maybe he'd spend a day or two there, but not very long. And then he'd be off to the next assignment. And his regret was that he didn't get to see the difference that he makes in people's lives. And I said, well, I know it made a difference for them. I have no doubt about that, because when you give from the heart, it's gonna make a difference. It has to, right? And he said, yeah, but Dan, I watch you with the people that you work with, and I see them change, because he would come out and spend weeks with us at a time. And he would meet the people that I would spend time with and coach and motivate, shall we say, right? And he said, your congregation, I've gotten to watch them grow through the years now and the differences that it's made. So you get to see that change. And he never got to do that. And, he would call it my congregation, and I'm going, I'm not a priest, and I don't have a congregation. I just help people that ask for help, right? Or just come into my path, God sends them to me. I don't have any claim to any of that. God brings me people, and it just feels right when it's that time, right? And so it was interesting to hear him share that, he did this work out of faith because he didn't get to see the results. But he had such a belief in God and such a belief in what he stood for and what he valued and his passion for helping people, that he just gave and gave and gave without really knowing what kind of an impact it had. And I thought that was a really interesting experience, right? I mean, how do you do that kind of work every day and not know whether it's making any difference, right? I mean, I get to see differences in my job, right? People that just walk in and, like one woman brought her husband to meet me because I lit up her day, right? I made her happy. And I thought, oh my God, what is that, right? But again, it's that same thing. It's about giving without necessarily needing to know that you've made a difference. Just knowing in your heart that you've done good and you've done the right kind of thing. So that was my journey to Northern California. We got to experience some interesting restaurants and interesting places, but more than anything, it was just getting to know my brother better, right? And I made that promise that I wasn't going to do what I've always done and what I think almost everybody does. They say, well, I'm going to get to that one of these days. And what I didn't want to have happen was to get that phone call and have never been up to see where my brother lived. Now that's taken care of. And I feel good about that. So if there's anyone that you haven't gone to see or that you've been meaning to call, but you haven't done it yet, do it now. Do it when you get done with the show tonight. Pick up the phone and call somebody. I've got someone I'm going to call when I get off the phone tonight, just to say, I've been thinking of you, right? We put these things off, and then something happens. I'll never forget my wife's uncle, her father's brother. My father-in-law and his brother got into a tiff years before and quit talking to each other. And then my wife, one of the family members, I think it was my wife, but it could have been my sister-in-law. Don't know now at this point. Years go by, right? But they called him to let him know that Tom had died. And the brother on the other end of the phone went, oh my God, I meant to fix this. And now it's too late. And he was crushed, right? That he didn't fix the relationship with his brother. And we all have people that we've loved who perhaps we don't talk to anymore. Perhaps it's just been a while since we've talked to somebody and we've meant to call them. I've always found that when I keep getting a message inside, my intuitive sense, it means there's something I need to pay attention to. My wife always says that if I repeat something 2 or 3 times to her, it's important, or I wouldn't do it. So she'll listen when she catches that I've said the same thing a few times. She's learned to pay attention to it because I don't do those things, willy-nilly. It's always a strong feeling within myself that I need to convey to somebody. I've learned through the years to really pay attention to my intuitive sense. Just like I mentioned that I'm going to just send a text to somebody before long, right? Yeah, that kind of thing, okay? So if you have somebody that you haven't called If you have somebody that you need to fix things with, right? Do it today. Don't wait. Life is short. We never know when the last moment is. Don't put it off. Don't regret that you're going to get that phone call and find out that something happened that you can't change, right? It's so simple. I'll never forget giving a balancing to a young lady one day. And I love giving energy balancings because when people get up off the table, it's like they go through this metamorphosis while they're on the table. It's just the most amazing thing. And I have loved doing that work for 40 years now, right? I don't get to do as many balancings as I liked to do. I got so many other things going on, right? But I still get that joy, usually every couple of weeks or 3 weeks, something like that. Usually a customer will call and I'll either give them a balancing here or I'll go out to their place. And it never fails that I get to have that wonderful experience of how somebody gets up off the table and just goes, oh my God. I've got one lady in particular who has gotten balancings for 30 some odd years now, right? Or 28 years, something like that. And she says, I keep thinking that this is going to get old, that I'm not going to want to do it anymore. And yet every single time I get a balancing, I feel so much different and so much better. It's like, why wouldn't I do that for myself, right? So if you haven't had a balancing, you might want to try it. You might like it, right? You might be surprised. So take care of those things. Take care of those people that you've been meaning to call. If you've meant to say something to somebody, but you just kind of put it off, maybe you're concerned about how they're going to react, or you're afraid of getting rejected, or whatever that story is. It's just a story. Do it anyway, right? So that's my little sermon about that. Do something that you've been putting off. You'll feel good about it. I feel great that I made that trip happen. I feel awesome. My brother and his wife kept saying throughout the whole 4 days that we were there, 5 days, something like that, 5 days, 4 days, that they were so glad we came up, that they enjoyed it so much, right? And what did it cost me? A few $100 in gas and, wear and tear and, little hotel rooms for, not all that much money, right? But just a world of experience and a world, a huge amount of enjoyment and appreciation and knowledge. I got to learn things about my brother I didn't know, right? And we got to reminisce about some of our experiences and growing up. I came from a very big family, right? And I was starting to mention this with some of my brothers and sisters on our call here tonight, that my older brother has a different experience of growing up in the family than, we all do, right? No matter where you are in the pecking order, your experience is different than your older sister, older brother, younger, whatever. They're different. And when you come from a really big family like we did, we had, 4 brothers and 4 sisters, something like that. Donna, B, Gina, 3 sisters. I'm missing somebody. Anyway, we had a big family. And their experiences of growing up are totally different than what I went through. Mom and dad were strict, and we didn't, if you went to the store with them, you better be on your best behavior. You're going to get it when you get home, and of course we didn't always get it when we got home, but you always had that fear of it, right? And then as they got older and, the kids kept coming and, they got tired of controlling everything. And they just said, oh, do whatever you want. Who cares? So the experiences were totally different. So, we got to share some of the things that we went through that we know our brothers and sisters didn't go through. And listening to one of my younger sisters talk about what it was like going camping with my dad was, it just gave us hours of enjoyment just talking about all of those things, right? And we all have those in our families, right? And we all have dysfunction in our families. Let's face it, there aren't very many families that have it all together and, the whole time that they're on this plane, right? So we all have those experiences. We all have the things that were great and the things that weren't so great. And that's life, right? So what I'm getting at here is that, no matter what all you go through, life goes on. So we make the choice of whether we're going to be happy and joyful and grateful and appreciative and compassionate and caring and sharing, or we're going to be miserable and miserly and hating the world and everything in it, and either of those is a choice. And that's what we talk about a lot on the show, right? Is that our way that we're looking at things affects us, and it also affects everybody else, right? We're just not always so clear about the impact we're having on other people, because when we're self-absorbed, we're only thinking about how things affect us. When we're outwardly focused, we're much more concerned with the impact we're having on the world. Interesting, isn't it? It's like they tell you got to look inside to look outside. It's so strange, and yet it's so true, right? So that was my trip to Oroville, and they were so sweet. Several times throughout the visit, they said, now you can come back next year. We'd love to have you come back next year. I thought, well, isn't that sweet, right? I don't know if I'll be able to make it up next year. I don't know what tomorrow brings, right? But I'd certainly be open to it. We had a wonderful visit, right? And there was nothing that kept me from going up there except for life getting in the way and me not making it a high enough priority. Now, there's a few other people I need to go visit, and I'm going to try to get those in this year. It's something that's important to me because, let's face it, I'm not getting any younger either. So I want to make sure that I let people know that they're important to me. Just like everyone that's on this show is important to me. You all mean so much to me because you're here. You're here because you want to grow. You want to support this old man, which I appreciate, right? And I hope you get something from it that maybe makes you realize that you're a better person than you think you are. Because no matter how well adjusted you've become, no matter how nice you think you are, I guarantee you really haven't allowed yourself to experience the fullness of who you are. I get awarenesses almost daily about things that I wasn't maybe aware of, or changes that I'm making still, because I don't want to be that codgy old man who is that get off my lawn kind of guy. And every once in a while I hear myself doing it, and it's like, oh God, I hate that, right? It's like we all, those of us that are parents, can hear our parents' voice in our head every time we talk to one of our kids about something, right? It's like, oh my God, I hear my dad every day, right? Or every day I hear my mom every day, right? And that's kind of the way life works as well, right? We learn through our experiences just like they did. And hopefully we continue to grow. We don't just say, okay, I'm X amount of years old now and I don't have to grow anymore. I can just be. Well, yeah, you can, but there's so much more that you can be. There's so much more that you can do. There's so many more people that need your help. Because as I say all the time, half of the joy in learning something is that learning, right? It's like, God, I realized this week that I'm not the piece of garbage I thought I was, right? And how nice is that when you get that feeling that, gosh, I don't have to beat myself up so much anymore. The beatings, oh my God. But that's great, right? I learned that lesson. But that's only half of the joy, and it's only half of the responsibility, right? I believe we're all here to become more God-like. Not that you are God, or you're going to become God, or that's whatever. But more God-like. To me, God-like means caring about others, having other people's welfare in your mind and in your heart. And that if God graces you with an overabundance of financial comfort, that you don't be a hoarder, that you use that money to do God's work with, right? And I saw a wonderful post on Facebook that said that our problem isn't that we can't feed the hungry, it's that we can't satisfy the rich. Yeah, think about that. The one percenters, right? Who've got, billions of dollars, and yet they've got to have more. Now, some are doing good things with their money, but I think we could all do better. I could do better. You could do better. We all can do better, right? And so that's my promise today, and it's my living amends, if you will, to do better every day, to help more people every day. It doesn't have to be buying somebody a house or giving them $100 or whatever, but there are little things you can do, no matter what your socioeconomic situation is, makes no difference. You can make a difference with a smile. We talk about it and we end our show every night with it, right? What can you do to help somebody that's not smiling today? Give them one of yours, right? Give them a smile. Help them know that somebody sees them. One of the things I experienced in Oroville was that I got up every morning and I took an hour-long walk because I'm on vacation. I get to go on walks. And I saw a lot of homeless people up there. And my brother's view on homeless people and my view on homeless people are a little different. He's kind of like, I hate that they throw trash around, and why can't they pick up after themselves, and yada, 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 yada. And I understand, but what got them on the street is usually what keeps them on the street. And there's a lot of different reasons for it. There's no simple answer to homelessness. There's no simple solution to help people in that situation. We both agreed that it started many years ago when somebody decided it was a great idea to take everybody out of mental hospitals and throw them on the street. Yeah, we actually did that as a country. And, my spiritual path is one of the East Indian philosophy. And there they have generations of people who were born and die on the streets. Generations. So it's not just a California thing. It's not just a Southern California thing. It's not just a Menifee thing or Riverside or wherever you might live. It's everywhere. And the solution isn't easy. So we can cast aspersions as to what kind of people they are and how they're not living the way we think they ought to. But what we can do, and what I tried to do, is at least acknowledge them when I walked by them. And most of them would just turn their head the other way. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I don't know many of us that are real comfortable walking up to a homeless person because you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what their state of mind is. And quite frankly, there's quite a few of them that are having a rough time mentally, right? And so you got to be kind of careful, and yet you can still be compassionate, right? So anyway, that was my experience of taking walks up in Oroville. Very interesting place. For one thing, interestingly, there was no Italian restaurants in the entire area. Interesting, right? I think there was a Thai restaurant. I never saw it, but my brother tells me there was one in there somewhere. A lot of Mexican food restaurants. They all seem to enjoy Mexican food. And a lot of pizza places, but not, and a lot of cafes, right? A lot of barbecue restaurants. It's a real meat heavy community, right? Barbecue beef was everywhere and on every menu. So for a vegetarian, it's kind of slim pickings, right? But we did all right. I didn't waste away, neither did Kate, and we had a good time. And that's what matters. And I'm really grateful to my brother and sister-in-law for their hospitality and for the time they spent. My sister-in-law's daughter and her husband had the houseboat that we went out on, and I offered to give them money for gas, and they wouldn't hear of it. And they just wanted to give and share their beautiful, lake and community with us, which is the way people are, right? Good people are. So they're good people. They have good hearts, and they really do care about other people, and they have a really simple kind of life. And those of us in the big cities, we tend to have a much more complicated life, right? So it was interesting to see that laid back style. It's like if they say they're going to be there at 1 o'clock, my sister-in-law would say that when they invite their daughter to some place and they want them there by, let's say, 1 o'clock, they'll tell them that the event's going to start at 11. Which is the way people used to treat my ex-wife and I. If they wanted us somewhere, they'd always tell us, 2 hours early because they knew we'd be late. Anyway, a great visit was had by all. And so I want to encourage you to do that thing that you've been putting off. And I'd love for you to share in the comments any time you've done that and the experience that you've had. And let us know next week if you did something this week that, maybe was spurred by something we talked about here tonight. All right. So again, with the theme that you just don't know what life's going to bring you, I was watching the football game tonight. Now, for those of you that don't know about football, there's a quarterback named Aaron Rodgers who made the decision that it was time for him to go to a different team, and he signed with the New York Jets. And just a spoiler alert, if you're recording the show and you don't want to know what's going on in there, turn off this right now, or at least the sound, so you don't know what I'm going to tell you. All right. So there's your spoiler alert. So anyway, Rodgers comes to the Jets and he's all excited about playing for that team, and he feels like he's been rejuvenated and he's excited to play football now. And in the very first series of plays, he tears up an ankle and he's out of the game. Now, how severe the injury is, we don't know. Maybe it's just twisted, but they immediately put him on a cart and carted him off the field. So it must be at least a severe sprain. So again, here you think that he's going to go to the Jets and he's going to do great, and the Jets are going to be winning the Super Bowl and everything's going to be wonderful, right? And the very first series of downs, he's out of the game. X-rays are negative, so it's a sprain. And I'm sure that's Luke that posted that for us. Thank you, Luke. Yeah, so you were watching the game too. You saw what I did, right? And again, another example that you don't know what the next moment is going to bring. So stay centered, stay in the moment. That's the whole key. You're welcome. And yes, I did. Thank you, Luke. You're a good man and a great football fan. So you don't know what the next moment is going to bring. And if we allow the highs and the lows to take us up and bring us down, our life is a roller coaster. And, on a heart monitor, you want to see that thing going up and down, right? You want to see the up and the down and the up and the down and the up and the down, because that means you're alive. But in life, I'm a short-term sufferer. I don't like long-term suffering. I used to live in it, right? But today I want my suffering to be as short amount of time and short amount of intensity as possible. Because feeling good feels so much better, right? We've all had down times, so we can all relate, right? We've all had those times when it's like, oh man. But as we learn that feeling good is so much better, we learn to shorten that time. I'm only going to give it, it's like if I do something wrong, I'm going to have a talk with myself. I'm going to be firm about it, right? And say, okay, this isn't what you want. You want to go this direction, not that direction. So I'll talk to myself about that for maybe a minute or two, maybe 5 minutes if I'm really ticked off about it, right? But I don't want to do that all day. It's just a waste, right? It just doesn't feel good. And I'm a feel good junkie, right? I love feeling good. It's my favorite thing. One of them. So anyway, that's my Sermon on the Mount for the evening. I want you all to have an awesome week. I am the sole host tonight, talking about things changing. There's a lot of change going on, and I'll share more of them as the weeks go by here. But there's a lot of change in the winds, and it seems like it's just happening to everybody. I've got many family members that are just going through a whole lot of stuff right now, and that's life. It goes like that, right? And I will do my best to stay positive and to stay a source for strength and comfort and care as we go through all these changes. And I'll keep y'all informed as to what's going on, right? But nothing, end of the world stuff today. Everyone's doing okay, but life is bringing changes, and there will be more changes to come. So I'm gonna sign off a little bit early tonight. I'm a little tired. I've been working hard, and I had that big long drive up and all that drive back, and then I took Kate to the airport on Sunday. She's taking an 8-day vacation with her sister in Hawaii. Yes, it's a tough life she lives, but she deserves it because she puts up with me. So I want to wish you all a very positive week. I want to remind you what to do if you see somebody without a smile. What should you do? Give them one of yours, because it makes a difference. And it feels good for you to smile. And it feels good to see the reaction of the person that you're smiling with. And that's right, Kimberlyn, give them one of yours. That's right, give them one of ours, right? Because it's free and it makes a big difference in the world. So until next week, thank you all for your constant support. I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. And we'll see you again next week. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for being on board. Bye.